Right? So that's what started everything around content, and we started creating these things for restaurants. And then fast forward, we started creating these higher production videos. We invested in cameras, in lighting, and we will go out and shoot all these like awesome things that would live in their website. But our marketer minds were like, how are you connecting this video that's going to sit on your website that you're paying $5,000 to $10,000 to your business? How is this bringing you business?
What's up, sales ascenders? Happy Wednesday. Today on our member spotlight, we have a awesome special guest. We're going to dive right into some incredibly interesting content, because content is profit, if you ask today's guest, and they've done just that. We're going to learn how they tripled sales, learn how they closed a recent 80K contract, and also how he was kidnapped. We're going to cover all that today. It's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. And they're just full of energy. If you guys would like to be sponsored, if you'd like to be broadcasted on the member spotlight, we are on a mission to connect like-minded entrepreneurs. Please reach out to Sean. Please reach out to myself. We want to make more connections. There is so much talent in this group, and there's more talent coming in every single day. We need each other. Anyone that's everyone, if you're here, that means you already have a lot of experience. And we already know that we don't want to solve every single problem. We want to solve the problem that we're focused on, so we can lean on each other and refer to each other on the other problems that they're superpowers on. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode, joined by none other than Luis. And
Yes.
Luis, thank you for coming out and hanging out with us today.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for the invite. I'm extremely honored to be here, man. I'm excited.
So we have to start with just the name. We were just talking a little bit before we jumped on, and I was like, hey, I want to make sure I say this right. And there was a little hesitation. It was Luis. But there's a story. He was open looping me like crazy before we jumped on. So there'll be some great stories. Let's start with your name. What's the story behind Luis?
Yes, absolutely. So for those who are familiar with the Biz Bros or the show Content is Profit, they know that there's two Luises, right? My brother's also Luis. I am Luis. We do pay twice for the events that we go to, even though they sometimes delete the name, but we have different middle names. So we're originally from Venezuela, and that's what happens. When you're brothers, you normally have the same first name and then a different middle name. So my full name is Luis Daniel. And then my brother is Luis Alfonso. Well, we call him Fonzi. So that's part one, right? And everybody's like, why did your mom do that? So we normally say, hey, that was a marketing move, so everybody will remember who we are. And then when everybody asks me, like, how do I actually say your name, Luis? Like, how do I do it? Is it Luis or Luis, right? And I'm like, you know what? The first year that I was here in the States is when I met my now wife, right? And she's from Canada. And I was so tired of people just asking me, how do I say your name? And she came up like, how do I say your name? I'm like, I don't care. Like, just say however you want. And she goes and tells, all right, Luis. And 10 years later, she still calls me Luis. So I'm now on a campaign move of changing it to Luis.
I say just every 10 years, you go back and forth, man. Keep it interesting.
Oh, man.
Listening to that, like, I feel like I need to just go back and forth possibly throughout this whole episode. Luis is going to talk about, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so thank you.
We'll make it a game for the audience.
yeah. How to say his name. Perfect. So you mentioned your show. You got a great setup there. Content is profit, and congratulations. You're now doing, you said, your 80th episode?
Yes, man. In a little over 4 months, I think. So it's been intense.
Holy cow! So is your bed like underneath your desk? Is that where you sleep, or?
Not really, man.
I'm just playing.
Almost. I mean, at some point, when it's okay to have a backup just in case we get in a fight with Katie. It was all good.
There you go. So, I mean, that's like 20 episodes. That's like basically an episode a day, 5 days a week. I'm doing quick math in my head. That's awesome, man, that you've done that much. And you've talked about, I think there's a couple things that are really important. Is content's a really big piece. It's that thing that we all know as business owners is important, but it's time consuming, and there's a lot of pain around that. And then even just hearing the comment that you made, it's like, I'm not going to be doing an episode a day. Like, that's it's unrealistic for a lot of business owners. I'd like to kind of work through a few of those things for our audience today, because you found a lot of really effective ways to actually keep this simple, and the word I would like to use, realistic. But let's start with you and how you even got into content. So how did you guys decide to start the show?
Absolutely. Really good question. To answer that, we actually have to go back 5 years when we actually started playing this game, right? So around that time, I was leaving college. My brother was leaving college. And we always were athletes. And the dream was to be professional soccer players. So we never really saw ourselves. Yeah, let it go. We never saw ourselves in the corporate environment, right? Like all these people that were graduating with me, they were hating their lives. People that I knew, they were hating their life in the corporate. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's not exactly what I want to do. Because I also had the opportunity to travel the world because of soccer. And I'm like, I want to have that opportunity again to actually go do something like that. There's also a higher goal. Our family is still back home, and we want to bring him here. And I have a 16-year-old son, so I want them to share with my family. And the only way for me to provide is to make my own opportunities and make sure that I can provide for them. So at the moment, and still today, I don't see that on the corporate side of things, because my ambitions are a little bit bigger than usual, right? My wife is like, "You're insane, you're crazy," and that's okay, right? But that set us on a quest on okay, what do we do? Like, how do we create a company? How do we start all this? And after reading the book, The One Thing, we're like, hey, what are we good at, right? It's, that is not soccer, right? Because at the time we saw the soccer opportunity as just coaching, right? Today we see so many other opportunities and avenues, and there's different plans later on. But at the time it was like, we don't really want a personal coach, or we don't want to create an academy. And like, oh man, that's too much. So we use social media. So I guess we're good at social media. So we actually dove into this Tai Lopez course, the gateway drug to entrepreneurship.
Yes, so true.
And I don't think we ever finished the whole thing, but after like 3 videos, we're like, we got this. And we actually went out and started selling social media services to restaurants. And our first client was this like Mexican restaurant that we had to convince that this was actually a good thing, right? And we often talk about the frictionless sale. That was everything but frictionless. We went in there for like 10 times, and now we wear t-shirts. My brother was wearing this full suit, but we finally closed the first sale, and it was like a $500 a month deal that we did with them. And that meant the world to us, right? So that's what started everything around content. And we started creating these things for restaurants. And then fast forward, we started creating these higher production videos. We invested in cameras, in lighting, and we will go out and shoot all these like awesome things that would live in their website. But our marketer minds were like, how are you connecting this video that's going to sit on your website that you're paying $5,000 to $10,000 to your business? How is this bringing you business? And all these questions started to come up, and it started to create a lot of friction with even the sales pitch. We will go in there and they'll be like, we want to pay you this much money for this video. And we're like, absolutely not, man. This is just going to sit there. It's not going to make you money, right? So we're trying to crack this thing. And we came across Russell Branson and Ryan Dice, right? After a conference. That was the first time I heard Russell personally. My brother was like, deep diving .com secrets at the time. And what was fascinating is that at the time I was on a full-time job with a fitness studio. I used to run a few locations. I had a sales team, 16 people plus the coaches.
Nice,
and so everything I knew about sales, it was all about convincing the people that they needed the service that I provided, right? So I was encountering a lot of friction in those conversations because it's not what they wanted. They just wanted to like be happy and eat whatever they want, or like go run 2 miles, even though our workout was amazing. And what's up, Sean? Even though our workout was freaking awesome and we'll get really good results, that's not what people wanted. So we encountered a lot of friction, and the messaging of our agencies was like completely off. So the conversions weren't there, and we weren't getting goals. And then Ryan Dice and Russell said, hey, the marketing departments or agencies are throwing this message out, this story, and then the sales department try to convince people that they have to join, and it's disconnected. It's not just one thing. And that was like my light bulb moment. And I was like, shoot, your marketing, your content, everything, the messaging, right? It's just the start of the sale. Like, it's a whole process. That's just the start. So we took that and we started working with brick and mortars. We created some content strategy, not deep diving at the time. But then we created the process of online selling, which with different funnels. So we will go to dentists and we'll create these funnels for them. It will go great, but we were also creating a new revenue stream, new processes on the back end for the business. So they couldn't like handle it, or they had a lot of friction because they didn't want to hire somebody new. There was a lot of indoctrination that needed to be done for this to be a success. And we internally with the agency, recognize that as a friction point for us to operate, because we were having a hard time just like having a conversation with these guys, right? In our eyes, it was successful when in 5 days you make 12 grand when you never sold a course before. But then we will get a phone call. It's like, that's not enough. I'm like, what do you mean that's not enough? You never ever sold something like this, and now you're doing it. This is a new revenue stream for you. So those conversations really sparked something in our heads where like we need to rethink who we're talking to, who's our dream client, like who do we really enjoy working with, who are we actually going to have a beer with, and keep the relationship going while both of us make money. So that set us into that quest of all the conversations led back to content. We're like going back to content, and that's where we landed. So last year at Funnel Hacking Live, we were executing some of that with some companies. We have a system called the M2M, which is how we multiply that content. And right now we exclusively work with the people that have long form content. So let's say a podcast like we do, then we multiply those points of contact. So it's all about the rapport, the relationships that you can build through content, right? Because it makes it easy for you to have a platform just like you guys have here, right? It helps you connect with people. It helps you increase the level of trust. But then you multiply those points of contact with the audience, and then they really start coming to you, right? Because you're positioned as the expert, as the guy that gives the message. And they're like, hey guys, how can I work with you? I'm like, perfect, here's how. And then they ask you, what do you do? But they really want to work with you, right? And that's that quest, and try to find how to craft and master this distribution and creation of high volume content. That's where it landed us to the show and what we do now. And we're having a blast, man. We're loving it.
And it's, a lot of us have even watching are creating content, have created content, have gone down that path that you're describing. And at least for me, I think it's still fun, powerful, great to hear just everyone's story of how they come into it. So you're sharing kind of getting into that agency model, talking with local businesses. Oh man, I love that you're hands-on. Here's actual companies with actual problems. Are we getting actual results kind of thing? And that's market feedback. That's what you need. And you're like, it challenged you to rethink like, okay, there's got to be a little bit better way to do this. You're at Funnel Hacking Live. So you decided to go the content route. Where did you decide to start?
So we always saw people like the classics, right? Gary Vee, Grant Cardone. These guys are publishing 7 times a day everywhere, right? And then you see people like Russell or even Steve Larsen. They're like, hey guys, publishing changed our business, right? Publishing is where it's at. But then you start publishing, and I see Sean's comment in there, right? A lot of people get started, and after 1 month, 2 months, they're like, oh man, I don't see the connection between this content that I'm doing, that I'm putting so much effort in, that I'm putting so much time or investing so much time, and then I don't see the results right on the back end. So with all that, we're like, okay, how can we actually create something for us? That was internal. That was for us, that we could connect the dots. And it was a really crazy experience, because we were out in this sales call. We sat down in a meeting room with these franchise owners. They had about 9 locations, and they saw some of the work that we did with other businesses. We were still working really local now, at that point. Mm-hmm. And this guy's like, oh man, this is amazing what you guys do. Like, we see the results, we see everything. But then we looked at your accounts and there's nothing there. And I'm like, why would you go to my account? Like, just continue to see the client stuff. And at the time, we pivoted so many times. And my brother, before we even, learn about Russell, he's like, I'm just going to delete everything because everything has been changing. And then, we hear, don't ever delete that. That's part of your story. Don't ever do it. Right.
Right.
we had a t-shirt business, we had a sticker business, we coached soccer, we did like a network, like it was just all over the place, right? But that's okay. But then they saw that and it was completely empty. Like Instagram, there was no Facebook, there was no consistency, there was nothing. And that deal didn't happen. It was 9 locations. It was a big deal for us. Yep. So we sat down after that meeting in our office and we're like, dude, there has to be a way that we need to build something that is consistent. So to elevate that rapport when people come to us, we're like, hey, we're being consistent every single day. We're there. So at the time we were like taking part of the 75 Hard challenge with Andy Frisella. And
man, I keep hearing about that challenge.
Yes, it is a good challenge. It was awesome. But we literally just wrapped it up like the week before, and 75 days of 2 workouts a day. And it was intense.
And you have to like read, and you have to like do 5 things or something.
Drink water, eat healthy. Like it was really good. And we're like, how can we replicate something like that on the content side for us, right?
So good.
So there was a lot of friction for us to create content, and that's when, answering to Sean's question, a lot of people might encounter that friction. Either that's editing, either that's finding the tool that I need to create content with, either finding what to say. There's a ton of stuff, a lot of elements, and we sat down and we wrote all those elements in the whiteboard, and we're like, what causes friction that is preventing us from publishing? Publishing is the ultimate goal. I just need to get it out, right? So we scratched everything that was causing friction, and then we ended up with Facebook Live. For us, create a Facebook Live is frictionless, because all I'm doing is I'm telling a story, and we just simplify the framework. We just tell a story on what's happening with the agency that day. And then after that, we just tie it with the business. We'll make an offer every single day. And it's 2 of us. So the idea is I just have 2 offers out there. Facebook page was non-existent. There was like nothing there. There's no fans. Where do we start? We started with our own audience, in our own profiles. We had a network of people. We didn't really know if they were going to connect. We never really knew if they were going to like the content, right? But we did. We started. The goal was stay consistent for 45 days of Facebook Lives. Then we started doing this thing, and I grabbed the minute. I did less than 10 minutes, so I could grab it and put it on LinkedIn, because I had really good connections from college in there. So I'm like, okay, let's just put it in there. That took me maybe 5 minutes, right?
Okay.
Then we mastered consistency, and we started publishing, and we started talking in front of a camera, and growth started to happen. And guess what? At day 15, the day that I did not want to publish, I came home at 11:30 at night. We had this conversation with a GM. This guy's like, take down this post, blah, blah, blah. This guy, like, the post went out like 5,000 organic views. People comment like crazy, 300 comments under the video. The studio, people were defending the studio. People against the studio were going against. It's like, I want it down. I'm like, on the phone, I'm like, isn't this what you want? You want like advertising, free advertising. You're not paying for this. And I need to take it down. I'm like, no. And I hung up. All right. And then I sit down on the couch, and I had, like, my son was 4 months old, and I'm sitting there with the bottle. And then as soon as he goes to bed, it's 11:30 at night. And I'm like, shoot, my video. I haven't published my Facebook Live today, but I need to stay consistent, right? So I grabbed the phone. Before that was always in the office. It was always horizontal. I was trying to have a nice setup around me. And I'm like, you know what? Whatever. Let's just do it. Right. So I sit down in the chair, just vertical, and I go and I tell this story, right? In less than 10 minutes, I'm like telling, hey, this is what happened with this guy. Can you believe it? And then I tie into polarization with the message. And then I tie with my business, and I say, hey, if you have different questions on how to tackle your content, let me know. Send me a DM. And I just throw the phone out there. Immediately after, like 2 minutes after, I see a notification. Is this guy that I met once in a parking lot, right? We're part of the same Facebook group, and we met up for coffee, and that's it. That was the only interaction I had with this guy. And he goes like, hey, Luis, dude, I saw your video, and I'm really interested to get to know you a little bit better and see what you do. So tomorrow we're doing this content dinner. And I'm like, what's a content dinner? Well, we'll sit down, we'll chat, we'll have, we'll eat, and then we'll record it with a bunch of business owners, and then you guys get the content and chop it up and do whatever you want. I'm like, absolutely, man. You said business owners, potential clients. Absolutely. I'll be there.
Yes.
So I go to the dinner, and everybody shares what they do. We share some stories. And after the dinners, he comes and is like, dude, I'm working on this contract with this $200 million real estate company, and I need people to do what you do. And that was the $80,000 contract that you mentioned at first. That thing changed our entire business model and the way that we would tackle conversations from now on. So that influx of work came in. My brother had to stop. I had to stop a few days later to execute on content because we're trying to build a system. We're like, shoot, like we need to finish this 45 live. So then we ended up in the Funnel Hacking Live. We're sharing the story. Everybody's like, why don't you guys do it again? Like, it's amazing. And I'm like, why don't we do it again? Right? To my brother.
Yeah, why don't we do it again?
I have no idea. Again, we're
this crazy thought of just keep doing more of what works.
Exactly.
Nothing else. Like just keep doing what works.
So then we did season 2 of 45 Live. About day 15 again. I think it was day 17 that time. We got more business coming in. So my brother had to actually stop. All my videos from that point on were about 11 at night because we're building the team and the systems in the back end. But I was committed to my 45 days. Yes. And so the business like just took off at that time. A lot of brick and mortars, local people that were part of our network started reaching out. But it was because I connected the content to my business. A lot of people miss that. They don't put enough offers in there. You have to let them know what to do. You have to let them know what you do on how you can help them. Because if you truly believe in your business, you're adding so much value to their life that them hiring you is going to explode. It's going to be so good. It's a disservice if you don't mention what you do, if you don't make an offer. And that's one of the first beliefs that we have to understand when creating content, because that's the beginning of a sale. And after that, we have been very fortunate to work with people like Josh Forti, obviously this company, JWB. We're 10 months in. We're working on different partnerships with content creators, agencies all over the place because of the connection that we made between our content and our offer.
So powerful. It's so powerful. Oh man, there's so many different quotes flying through my head. One is, everyone's like, oh, it's always who you know. It's like, no, it's more like who knows you in the framework of content, right? And then I'm thinking of another entrepreneur I like to follow, Dan Fleshman. Give a little shout out to him. He's done a lot of cool stuff, but one thing that he always harps on is, you know what? If you're wondering what to do in your business, just spend 1 extra hour selling. Just spend more time selling. Yeah. And there's a couple of comments you made in there that are really important, like how many times, how many offers are you making per day, and how many new leads, contacts are you making per day? Like just to oversimplify it, and in a just a genuine way, and building relationship connection. So Absolutely. Powerful, man. So you guys did that. I think just to kind of dissect the $80,000 contract, which congratulations, that's exciting. I know that sounds like a bit ago, but still, it made a big difference. And for all of us, I think consistency, persistency does make a difference. Anyone that's done business long enough knows that. So you guys started changing your model around this, and that's where you guys have landed in content. How over the course of doing that, what are some maybe like top 2, top 3 key ways of how you've become more efficient to where it's not nearly as overwhelming as all of us feel when we have to do content?
Absolutely. Good question. We face the same question. We're like, wow, we wanna be able to multiply our message like these guys do, right? 7 times a day in every single platform, right? Create the omnipresence. We now call it relative omnipresence. You only have to be present and consistent where your audience is. That doesn't mean every single platform, right? Yeah. So how we tackled it was, for us, the Facebook Live, the 45 Live experiment, that was our minimum viable content. So cool. I recommend everybody to look back and see what's your capacity to stay consistent, right? So if consistency means 3 times a week, that's okay. But you have to make a commitment that consistency 3 times a week for a year. That's the thing. So if that's your initial commitment, for us was every single day. And then you got to look at your capacity. Okay, what is my capacity to actually create that content? And then after capacity is resources. So what are my resources to create that content? So resources meaning, do I have a team? Do I have money to hire a team? If I don't have the money to hire a team, do I have the time to do it, right? So sometimes our expectations are very, very high because we see people that have been working on their craft for years, and they have amazing teams and they have amazing systems in the back end that allow them to execute the way that they do, like Rosso and Gary Vee and Grant Cardone, which have amazing teams, right? Now scale it back and be like, okay, the first thing that we got to look at is like, how can I stay consistent? And it's every single day. So for us, it was Facebook Live. Now, when COVID happened and all our brick and mortars closed and we had no paychecks coming, we were like, holy moly, what are we doing? Like, I had a mini freak out for like 2 days that I didn't really come to the office. I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? Right. My wife is about to graduate college. We have a kid. What happens? Well, we saw that we had some time in our hands, back to resources, right? And we always wanted to start a podcast just because everybody says that the podcast is amazing and the best buyers come from podcasting and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Great. Let's commit to that. So what's our consistency? Our consistency is going to be 3 times a week. Sweet. Perfect. What's our minimum viable content on the podcast platform? Well, it's a video. Sweet. Do we chop it off right off the bat? We could, but I don't want to. I need to master consistency 3 times a week. I got to be able to publish it 3 times a week. So how do we do that? Perfect. My friction points are editing. My friction points are the audio. My friction points are blah, blah, blah. Do we have solutions for those friction points? Yes. If we don't, remove it. So for us, the biggest friction point was the editing. So we said, okay, we're actually going to record it and do it live. So we committed to do it live Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, right? With no exception. And the last 5 months, we've done that, which is awesome. And then from there, once you master that consistency, then you can start adding pieces to that. So then what was the next piece on the podcast? And we started experimenting. And if we did it for more than a week and we could hold consistency, perfect. Now we have a machine 5 months later that in the last 5 months, we published more than 1,000 different pieces of content that come from the show. That includes the main video, the audio, chop it up in different pieces, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, every podcast platform available. But it started with your minimum viable content. So that's what you have to start. See what consistency looks like for you. Take into account your resources, your time, your money, your team. If you have a team, it's easier to scale. But then you have the systems issue, right? So how do I create a system that can hold consistency?
And I was going to say, let me jump in here just for a second, because I was going to say, let's go down that path a little bit, because what does your team look like? What do your systems look like? Let's go that direction. So let's start with just your team. How many team members do you have?
Working on the M2M specifically?
Yeah.
3. And we don't just do content for ourselves. We do content for the clients. So every month we handle more than 1,000 different pieces of content. As it right now, we're expanding. So if you know any video editors or people like that, send them my way. But the system that we created was like, okay, how do I actually save time? Because for us, that's our most valuable resource. So we created the M2M to account for that. So everything that we design around the show is because of that. And that's exactly what we sell to our clients, because their main issue is the time. Greg, he was a recent guest on the show, but he's a CMO of a $200 million company. They have 80 employees, right? And this guy was committed to content like many people are. And he's like, I want to figure it out, but then I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And he was investing about 80 hours a month creating content. A CMO, 80 hours a month for a year. That's called commitment, right? So when we hop on the call with him, I'm like, hey, Greg, like what's your biggest pain point? Like how can we help you? Like what's the issue? And he's like, man, I believe in this. Like I've seen results, but it's hard to stay consistent because of this, and that, right? And for him, consistency was just being live every time, everywhere, right? And trying to catch the team members and record them. And everybody was like, he was hurting the relationships within the workplace. And we sat down and we're like, hey, perfect. If consistency is your main thing, great. Like that's exactly how we can help you. So the next thing is like, I only need you for 4 hours. And he's like, 4 hours a week? Done. And I'm like, no, 4 hours a month. And he goes like, oh, double done, man. Like, let's do it. And now I think they have been publishing triple of what they were doing before. They publish about 55 different pieces every single week. They have 2 live shows. The guy's only investing about 1.5 hours of his own time per week. And it's all about that system, right? That we can execute. So people can build their own stuff. It's just going to take time, obviously. But if you can find that one person that has already a system that can plug into what you already consider consistency for content, even better, because then that's just gas that you're adding, right? And there's so many different ways that we can go about this. You know, we haven't even touched paid over your content, or like it's just a whole world within itself.
That is, it's so true. I'm like thinking of all the different angles, and I'm actually looking up just the comments that we're getting coming in. I can't respond we're using StreamYard and StreamYard with the group thing, unless you know a hack. Lewis, do you know how to like solve that content problem? But let's see. Clover responded. I can't, and see, I can see Clover. I just see you as faithful Facebook user.
User anonymous.
Yes, but if you do go to StreamYard.com StreamYard.com/Facebook, just a couple clicks, your name will pop up there. But I pulled up on my phone. Clover, Carol, if you reach out to him, it sounds like he might have some editor connections for you, Lewis. There we go. Sweet. On the member spotlight, making connections. That's the whole point. So that's awesome.
I'll be sending you a quick DM. Let's chat.
Yes. Thank you for speaking up, Clover. And anyone listening, if you guys have questions about content, pain points, ask Luis or Louis. I'm just kidding. Luis will be happy to answer those questions and address it. That's why we're having this conversation right now, because we're all having these conversations in our head, or with our team, or restlessly at night, not sleeping, and there's help all around us. We know this to be true. Networking has completely changed my life. It has completely changed Sean and Melissa, my partners' life in business. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for other building just quality, strong other relationships. And so, we're continuing to create and form those even amongst other people. So it's happening right here. So, okay, we'll come back to more content stuff.
Yeah.
You've already dropped in a ton of value. Thank you for taking time and sharing this.
Absolutely.
Just for like on the connection piece, you got kidnapped. Like you dropped that one on me. Let's talk about where were you? What happened? This is, I don't know. That one caught my attention.
Yeah, definitely. And full disclosure, we've actually been debating to see if we actually share that story with audiences, because especially in the world that we live now is kind of crazy, right? But to give a little of context, right? Like I mentioned, I'm a little bit. I'm from Venezuela originally. I grew up at 15. I left the country to go play soccer in Italy. Then I came back for another year. Then left to play soccer in Spain for another year. Came back. Lot of small stories in between, but at the end of the day, it was like paperwork and passport, and being from a country from the third world, there's a lot of limitations. And now that we live here in the States, my whole my wife is from here, her family is from here, and we have an amazing opportunity that and I think it's like a sea, an ocean of opportunities, right? It's very easy for people from this country to make it happen. If you put your mind into it, you can make it happen. So growing up in Venezuela, we were never poor. We went to a good school. That's how I learned English. But we were in contact with a lot of stuff, right? And what started to happen was a really crazy political situation, right? A dictatorship started. As I grew up with that, like seeing what was happening, a lot of people leaving the country, a lot of my friends left the country, a lot of families left the country. We love my country. It's a beautiful country. Like if you Google Venezuela, I'm sure you're going to see a lot of beautiful things. We have every type of climate. We have the beach, we have the desert, we have the jungle, we have the savanna, we have snow, we have desert, like everything is in there. It's a paradise, right? But unfortunately, the situation is not good. So with that comes a lot of different things where the police is corrupt. There's different parts of the city that are not too safe, right? And then with that comes the need of trying to find food, because then the supply is not there. There's no food in the supermarkets, or the need to find money in ways that is not just a job because inflation is too high. So all these things are happening right around that situation. And at the same time, I was 18. My friends are 18. At that age, you want to go out, you want to have fun, you want to interact, you want to be a young person, like connecting, like what young people do, right? Like, so what happens is after certain time of the night, it was just very unsafe to be out. And one of those nights, I come back from soccer practice. I tell my parents, hey, I'm actually gonna go out, and a friend of mine has a party down the road. Is our same neighborhood, which is close neighborhood, like there's
Crazy.
security and stuff. So I go out. We parked inside of the apartment, so I don't have to leave the apartment. That was my excuse. And then I get in there around midnight. Most of my friends have been drinking. Somebody calls, hey, can you pick us up? My friends have been drinking, so I'm like, I'm the only sober one here, so I'll do that, but I won't drive my car. So somebody has to come with me. So this person volunteers to come with me, and another friend basically gives me her car. And her car was kind of like a newer model, which at that night, people can just take. It's really, and didn't really think it through. You think you're invincible, and you hear all these stories of that stuff happening to people around it. I'm sure that if you talk to any other Venezuelans, you will find out that they have somebody that they knew very close that something like this happened. And we took off, right? So it was about 10 minutes away. We're driving down the street. I am flipping a Yui, like my wife says, just going U-turn to pick these people up. I call them like, hey, I'm not stopping. As soon as I park in front of your house, and all the houses there have like this big wall in front to just security. You have electric fences. So that it's a little challenging, right? So I'm on the phone with them as I'm like going around, and it's like, hey, I'm here, start coming out, because you guys jump on the car and we immediately go, right? So we're not sitting ducks here.
That's the plan. Yep.
So as soon as I'm turning around, I see a pair of lights coming our way. I just think that's another car going through the street. As soon as I pull in front of the house, this car just accelerates. Bright lights. I don't see anything through my mirrors. My friend's about to open the door. I tell him, hey, don't do it. When I turn around, there's a guy next to me with a gun, and I knew that was it. So obviously super nervous. They were called. They were screaming at us. They're just like, get back. My instinct was to just go out of the car. So I opened the door and try to go out. They pushed me back in. Two guys jump in the back. They grab me. They pull me back. They grab my friend. They pull him back. They grab her
from the front seat to the back seat.
From the back seat to the front seat. They reach out and then just like
exactly, and pulled you to the back seat.
Pulled us to a back seat. Heads down. Guns all over the place. My thought is there's different social classes. Very low social classes have a very distinct way to speak. And these guys did not have that way. They would speak just fine. The regular accents, like the words that they say is like, if you compared like ghetto talk to like just college, like it's something like that, right? Just to put a picture in your head. I am convinced that they were corrupt cops looking for a car, and they grabbed their wallets to try to get money. I had no money. They laughed at me. They threw it and then after driving for like 30 minutes, we were very, very lucky because they just like threw us out on the street and they just took the car. There's many, many stories like that where people
doesn't go that way.
Doesn't go that way. They call it express kidnapping. It is a thing. And we were very lucky that we were dropped off like 2 blocks away from a friend's house. We're a little bit in shock, obviously. So we run to this place. We knock on the door. It was like 2 a.m. in the morning. And then our parents pick us up. And that's it, man. And that was one of the days that I was like, I don't want to continue to live my life this way. I want opportunities. And then I got to do everything I can in my power to change environment, because we all know that environment is a really important factor of success. And that's it, man. That was the day. That was the weekend. Something else happened later that weekend, which we can talk about in the next episode. But that was the weekend that I was like, I'm done. I'm gone. I'm willing to leave my home in search for new environments. So yeah, that's the kidnapping story. So we've been able to share now times. Not to play the victim, because that happened a long time ago. I am very thankful that everybody involved was okay. Everybody was safe at the time, but it gave me a lot of perspective at the moment. And now we've been able to build something really cool up here, hopefully to turn around and help the people back home. So that's the goal.
My goodness, man. First off, thank you for opening up and sharing that story. Absolutely. I know that's not an easy story for you, but I mean, it gives more, like, we're real people. Like you, everyone in this group, and like we all have our own stories and struggles, and in this case, like life changing trajectory type. I mean, there's a very clear thought, at least that you're sharing, emerged from that. I'm not
Yeah.
going to be here anymore,
Yeah.
and that won't leave you. And that drive and that focus, like I can just feel you, like we're just getting to know each other here right now in front of everybody. So, but it takes a certain amount of courage. So thank you for opening up and sharing that. And it gives some more depth to your drive and your focus and why you're so passionate about what you're passionate about, because just perspective on how much opportunity we really do have around us. And the content piece, there is a time component, but there are, like you said, resources, capacity, teams. There is a way, and there is also a big return. And when did you guys, and just to kind of bring it back into content, when did that return really start to escalate for you guys?
Day one, man. Like I said, the 45 Live was really great to create that consistency, prove the concept that if you attach an offer to your content, it works. And then I mentioned that with COVID, the brick and mortar business, it was about 9 locations that they called us, and they're like, no paycheck. That was a lot. That was a lot of money for us.
So you're getting attention. I mean, I know that one didn't close, but you were still getting the at bats and which is big for the pipeline.
Absolutely. So we work on retention, monthly retention fees, right? And but they called and they're like, dude, we're close, like for the next, I don't know how long, and we won't pay you. And those are relationships that we built. And I was like, I totally get it. I understand. So what happens, like we dedicate to the show immediately, man. I think it was episode 5. Wow. Somebody saw it. Episode 5, that's a week and a half of producing the show, not even with the pieces, like just the show. And the person was like, guys, I love what you guys are doing. We hop on a call, and I'm absolutely. So let's hop on a call. And that was like our first client from the show on this new market. And then it was like a week after the second one came in, and then we developed a relationship with them. And it was like, they referred us to somebody else. And it just like very quickly within the first month, we got the business back that we lost thanks to COVID. And then from there, everything was good. So we were able to immediately scale. It was like within 3 weeks, we were already putting out, so we can bring people into the team to develop the M2M and the system on the back end to be able to do this, right? And yeah, it has that it was immediate because we connected the content with the sales side of things. We're like, this is not just content for content. This is not just content for value. Yes, it includes a ton of value, 100%. If everybody goes listen to the show, I assure you 100% that you're going to find something really valuable there. Which, by the way, you guys are coming. So excited. And then, but also at the same time, you have to connect that with your business. So there's 2 ways. You have the audience way, you have the guest way, the relationships. What can come out of that? And it is about how can you get creative around your platform so you can develop those relationships and so on.
That makes sense. Oh man, there's definitely a few more things I want to dive into here with you. And before we do, this is Clover again. Thank you for your question, saying, hey, just tell us more about 45 Live. And Clover, if there's something specific you'd like to hear, definitely let us know. But yeah, in terms of your 45 Live, you were, just to recap, you were on Facebook because there's no editing, and that was like the simple place to start.
Yes. So a lot of people come with these very complicated, we call them content maps. So they're like, I want to be here and here and here and 5 different locations, and they see the outcome, but they don't really see past that and on how I create that. And then again, they miss the capacity part, they miss the resources part, and there's many tools that facilitate that for you. But from there, even going at a very basic, what do I say, right? So there's plenty of tools, plenty of spreadsheets that tell you exactly what to say and what your content pillars are, and that's wonderful. But if you cannot master it yourself, because you are the bearer of your message, right? Nobody can tell your story better than you. It's going to be really challenging. So 45 Live was mainly about building the habit around consistency of creating content. So it's just like practicing a sport. If you play soccer, you're not born shooting with your left foot, right? I was born left-footed, so awesome. But at the same time, I also can shoot with my right foot. But I had to practice every single day. I had to go and make my reps. The same thing with content, right? If you don't master the story side or the message side, right, is really challenging. So take it as a maybe learning opportunity to dial down your message. So quick story. We have this guy that we're helping, right? And he's a coach. He's in South America. And he's like, guys, this is so awesome. I've been in corporate all my life. I've been an executive. I've traveled through different countries. I am ready to coach. I'm like, absolutely, man. That's so exciting. How can we help you? So he's like, okay, I need a content team, right? I need all this. And I'm like, perfect. Do you have a piece of content that we can work from? And he's like, no. And we're like, okay, that's going to be really challenging because we need pieces of content from you every single week so we can do what we do best. So we put him on this path of creating content, and he's like, sweet, let's start. And I'm like, perfect. Your tryouts for you to be a client needs to be the 45 live. I need you to go live for 45 days. I'm like, dude, what do I talk about? I'm like, there's different tools that we can go about, but let's keep it super simple. Tell a story of what happened in your day and then relate it to what you want to teach. That's it. I need you to do that for 7 days. Sweet. So he goes, he does that. He comes back after 7 days and he's like, dude, Luis, this was great. Like the first day I thought it was going to be super hard to talk for 3 minutes. Guess how long I talked? 30 minutes. It's like, just like, right? All the information. So he did the 7 days. And what he discovered after the first 7 days is that he kept repeating similar topics. So I asked him, what are those topics? And he's like, mindset, entrepreneurship, purpose, right? And I'm like, perfect. Those are your pillar content. The content. That's it. You don't need to talk about anything else. He found that through publishing, right? Through publishing. And that's fine. We can pre-think and sit down in a whiteboard and do it, everything. But if you don't feel it, right, it's going to be really challenging to stay consistent. So he started, and while he was starting it, he started to identify those pillar topics. Sweet. So the next week, I'm like, sweet. Okay, let's create a little bit of structure about this pillar content, right? So let's say you have four topics. So pick two, multiply that by whatever. Every 2 days, you're going to change the topic and then tell a story about that and then a teaching and then connect them with you. With you. Just connect with me. That's it. Send me a DM, whatever. So he did that for the next days and people started reaching out and asking questions. And he started taking down notes on the questions. And then after the next 7 days, he's like, dude, this is so awesome. I have all these questions. And what I've seen is like, because people relate with my story and this thing, I have the solution to the questions that they're asking. And I'm like, sweet, now you have a product. So he's like, whoa, yes, that's awesome. So in 2 weeks, he was able to find his message. He was able to build this product based on the questions that his audience had. Personal profile, by the way, it's not a fancy Facebook page. And then he continued to promote. So we tackle the rest of the days as in campaigning for his first ever webinar, which he did. Not optimal, but he executed and he sold stuff. And then he created his podcast show. And now he's like 15 episodes in. He uses it as a relationship builder. He landed a contract with a company that talks to big companies and corporations in South America. So that's how the power of 45 Live. That's how you can find your message. That's how you can find the things that you can talk about through publishing already. You don't have to have it ready before. That's okay, right? It was fun. That was a fun experience with him.
That's so powerful, man. That's so powerful. And Sean has kind of a quick question when it comes to that, like auto systems, because we're talking about repurposing and where to start and how to keep it simple. And as it grows, and you use a certain phrase about being omnipresent, it being all relevant. What was the phrase again?
Relative omnipresence.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, when we get into that, like auto systems and pre-scheduling, what's your take on that?
Yes. So go back to the same question. What's your capacity and what are your resources, right? So for us, every episode means that we're creating 1, 2, 3, 5. Like each episode creates about 20 points of contact. Points of contact mean that piece of content being distributed through a platform, right? And we do 3 of those a week. So what are the tools that allow you to optimize your time? So for this client, for example, they publish 55 times a week. We only spend 20 minutes of every single week distributing this content, 55 different pieces. Wow. Because there's a system behind. So the question is, how can I use my time wisely If there's a tool that can allow you to do that, perfect, right? For us, it's a mix of both automation and organic. Right now, every platform has some sort of scheduling option. Facebook, for example, has Creator Studio. You can schedule Instagram posts. You can schedule IGTV. You can schedule pretty much everything from there on the Facebook platform. But there's different tools that you can find that work best with you and your team, right? So if it's just you, I would recommend start with the platform itself, just because they reward you a little bit more because you're publishing from their platform, right? But then we use tools like, for example, Agora Polls, which allows us to publish literally everywhere, because we're okay publishing the same piece of information in different platforms, because we want our content to be consistent. How we frame it inside of those platforms is a little bit different, but ultimately the information, the message that we share is the same. So we have, it comes to planning, right? How can I spend the least time possible? So come up with a cadence that you can support with consistency. So if that's like 2 posts every Monday, 1 post on Tuesday, like what does that allow you to do? Once that's set, commit to that for a period of time, measure, right? See the results is happening, and then try something different like 3 months down, where you can add pieces to it or take pieces and track results. You might discover that you might be okay publishing maybe a couple of times less because it's the same results. So you're like, oh, yeah. And what we found is that the platform's reward is consistency. They want you to be present in their platform. They want you to interact, right? So if that consistency is like every 2 days, that's okay. What's your capacity? What are your resources? So resources, tools fall into the resource category, right? Teams fall into the resource category. So if you have a VA that might work in the Philippines overnight, then you can give them all your pieces and they can follow the cadence. For them, it's going to be really simple to execute. And then the next morning you wake up and everything is distributed, and all you got to do is syndicate, tag people, and engage in conversations. Again, it's social media, right? We have to be, we're developing relationships. Content is a tool to put you in front of that relationship.
Makes so much sense. And this is because I want to ask the question simply, hey, what platforms are you seeing the best response on, most engagement? A really common question for you get. Let me throw a little bit more context on this so it's not so broad and it's a little bit easier to answer.
Okay.
Based on who you're serving and the content that you're distributing, where are you typically seeing the best, return, and what industries are those in?
Absolutely. I think we started to learn that when we defined our dream who, right? We mentioned that we're like, who's the person that you want to drink a beer with and work together and be successful, right? And then after that, we're like, where are they? So when the whole COVID happened, our market, our dream client, and I'm doing air quotations, is brick and mortars, right? That's what we knew. We were never around the online community. We were heavily involved in the learning side of things. We're part of several masterminds, but we never saw that as a market. And then, so we sat down, we're like, wow, okay. The questions keep coming from this group of people on how do we do this that we do so awesome. Maybe that might be a market that we can tap right into, or conversations to have. Let's see what happens. So we shifted immediately because the brick and mortars are closed. So we need to go on the online space to do this. Guess what? Where are those communities? Where are those Facebook groups? What are those companies that preach what we do? Sweet. Gary Vee audience, right? Where are the people going that follow Gary Vee because he has a content multiplier? Peng Joon has a content multiplier, right? All these machines, right? There's people that learn it, but then they don't have the time to execute them. Guess what? But they have their resources. Guess what? I have the team that can execute if they have their resources. Sweet. Awesome. That's the market I'm going for. So for us, initially it was Facebook. But then we also find out that LinkedIn is really, really strong organically. So we started publishing there, and we have been able to develop really cool relationships there on the corporate level, because executives, right? People that make decisions might be on LinkedIn, might not be on Facebook. So now it's been fun because on the Facebook side of things, we're able to develop really, really cool relationships that might originate in JVs, different deals on a different side of things. Some consumers, like some business has come from it, absolutely, but the audience is also being developed on a technical standpoint because we're putting money behind their content. So we're building an audience to then later hopefully offer something for them that is really, really valuable. But then on LinkedIn, is really good high-end relationships with corporations or big businesses that might not be on Facebook. So there's an advantage for every platform. YouTube, for example, we haven't dove in 100% because that's a whole monster in itself. But Google is a search engine, right? So you might post something today, and then 3 years later, somebody reaches out to you because they saw that one video. So there's a lot of value in there too. To start, where do you think your dream client is? Where are they hanging out? And then start creating conversations there, right? The content, what that's going to do, we call it the safety net effect. If you start those conversations, they're going to, for sure, they're going to research you. They're going to go look at your profiles, what's happening. If there's no consistency, game over. But if there's some kind of consistency where your message is spread out, then that's going to spark, and they're like, yes, they're legit. Let me have a conversation with them. And then you can create a business opportunity.
When you think about getting your profiles, like, all set up, like you just mentioned, what does that entail for you? Is that Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook? Are you on TikTok? You said you're not doing too much YouTube. What's like the foundational profile of all like, what does that look like in your world from your perspective?
Yes. Going back to that world, consistency, right, dude?
Well, and I mean just in terms of setup. So like,
yeah.
do you have all those profiles set up? What platform do you not focus on? YouTube's one of them?
Yes, YouTube, there's a base there. In the next few months, you guys are going to start to see really cool stuff there. Okay. But that came 6 months after we started the show, right? It took a second, right? But for example, our Facebook was the first thing because we were doing the Facebook Lives, and that's where we hung up, and that's the relationship that we were building. So we believe in direct response. If somebody doesn't want what I want, what I need, doesn't want what I'm offering, doesn't matter. Like, we can have a conversation, but I'm not going to try to sell them, right? I want to talk to people that really want what I offer, because then the conversation is so much easier. I want to remove all that friction. So that's why my profile has literally exactly on my cover picture exactly what we do, right? As a service. And then all my social profiles, we made the decision that our Instagram was going to be a mix of both, right? So we obviously have the Biz Bros Co. Account that we do a lot of business stuff in there. But for our personal, I post a lot of my family stuff, right? Like, if people can connect on a personal level with me there, but every link that I can put in there is going to be sharing it with my Bistros account. Anything business-wise, like the Bistros, the Facebook, my Facebook, personal Facebook on profile, it's going to be every single link is going to try to relate to us. We're still finding links that are sending them people to stuff that we had 3 years ago that we don't do anymore. Crazy. So it's a process, right? But, do what you can, right? Scan your Facebook page, see what are the links in there, making sure that everything is consistent with your message, with your sites, with your stuff. People are going to find little loopholes and here and there. When they find them, fix them. But as long as everything is consistent, where you're sending people, you're not confusing them. That's the thing. Like, you don't want to confuse them. Like, oh, I offer 5 different things. Send them to one place. Where can you have a conversation? And then from there, you can start moving them in different paths. And then we can talk about communication and email. And it's just a lot of stuff.
It grows and grows and grows and get into pay. Well, hey, thank you for hanging out with us today and beating up content a little bit. It's powerful, it's relevant, and it's profit, which is talked about on Content is Profit. So if you guys haven't checked that out yet, definitely go check out their show, support them. Support a fellow Sales Ascender member in the Sales Ascender Inner Circle here in this Facebook group. Before we wrap it up, where can people go to find you? Where's the best place to reach out to you at?
Best place is come hang out in the shows. We actually do them live in our Facebook page at BizBrosCo every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If you want to come and see the behind the scenes and how everything is done, we have some good bloopers there, and you guys can actually interact with the guests, ask questions just like you guys do here. The audio gets published every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So go listen, see if you guys like the message. We have a blast. We do that for us, and we're glad that people are liking it. And then if you want to send us a DM at BizBrosCo everywhere, we're happy to answer any questions.
That's awesome. Thank you for putting that out there. So if you, like all business owners, you want to get your message out there, go hang out with Luis and let him spread your word, your message. That's awesome. Thank you for throwing that out there.
Thank you.
So lastly, what is the big impact that you'd like to leave in the world?
Oh man, that's such a big question.
Yeah. Wham, there it is. And go.
In the world, I think I want to see home, like my country, Venezuela, back to 30 years ago, where we had a really strong economy. There was full of opportunities. I obviously want to provide opportunities for different kids, especially on the soccer environment. That's why I mentioned there's bigger projects later on the soccer side of things. But sports did so good. It's like so much to us mentally, physically. It set us up for success because you're learning from your own mistakes. In a world where you don't touch sports, we see failure as a bad thing. Failure is just like samples, right? We can get up and adapt, and sports gives you that. So especially in South America, there's a lot of indoctrination being done, and there's not enough education about these kind of things so I want to provide opportunities for them. So how'd that look like? Still don't know. We're figuring it out. Soccer might be a way on, how to get people on scholarships, how we can get people to be in front of many opportunities because of sport. So that is something that we have dear to our heart, and hopefully we can start executing really, really soon.
Luis, your story is powerful. You are powerful. Thank you for opening up and sharing, sharing your journey with us, all of us, members here. And so, man, if there's anyone listening to this that has other ideas to help accelerate Luis's vision, please reach out to him and do so, because I know there's a lot of, again, talent in this group, and it's going to keep growing. So thank you for taking some time to hang out with us today.
Chris, thank you so much. And Sean, obviously, for the invitation. I appreciate you guys. And looking forward to hang out more in this group.